Hello and welcome back. This is part two to my discussion with you of fair and foul within the first act of Shakespeare's Macbeth. Sorry about the length of the previous video. I think it runs about eight and a half minutes or so. My suspicion is that this one is also going to run about eight and a half minutes, but I'll do my best to keep it down. So without further ado, let me share the screen with you. As with before, I'm using our online text. Previously, we talked about the prophecy from the witches towards Macbeth and Banquo, and about how each line is both fair and foul, and depending on who sort of hears the line, it could be fair or foul. So what eventually happens is that the witches leave, of course, Banquo and Macbeth have a conversation, and then in comes Angus, and in comes Ross. And if you recall, Ross was told to greet Macbeth as being the Thane of Calder. Now, being called the Thane of Calder aligns itself to what the witches said, saying, because if you recall, the witches say that Macbeth is going to become the Thane of Calder, but he's also going to become the king. So when Macbeth hears this, he's shocked. And he says, and we're looking at scene 3, by the way, and on line 108, he says, "What can the devil speak true?" So this is a great example of fair versus foul in terms of that concept that we talked about, both in terms of language, but also in meaning. Well, let's take a look at what's really going on here, of course. So the devil, he's making reference, of course, to the witches, right? The truth is the prophecy. The fair versus foul is, of course, the devil is something that's foul and truth is something that's fair, but it's a little bit more complex than this. So let's take a look at how Shakespeare really plays with the language. The word devil actually can be translated, or it can be defined as a slanderer. Now, the word slanderer is when you speak falsely of somebody. So literally that word devil means false on one level or another. And so it's being juxtaposed in this very clean way with that word truth. And so you have this wonderful paradox of false speaking truth. And so this is definitely a foul versus fair thing that's going on here. So let's move on to the next example. We're jumping over, we're still in scene 3, and if you notice, there's an awful lot of content here in scene 3. We're looking at lines 123 to 126, and this is Banquo speaking, all right? So Banquo is warning Macbeth. This Banquo is sort of onto this. Banquo was recognizing that this prophecy is being delivered by, and to quote Macbeth, the devil, right, by the witches, and we've established already that they're evil. He goes on to say that, and sometimes to win us to our harm, the instruments of darkness tell us truths, win us with honest trifles to betray us in deepest consequence. There's an awful lot of juxtaposition between fair and foul, right? You can hear it just in language itself, the way the things, it's a compare and contrast with the language in itself. So it goes on to say, so to win us to our harm, all right? But more importantly, the instruments of darkness, so that's our foul, will tell us truths, that's our fair. Honest trifles, that's our truth, that's our fair once again. And then betray us, there's our foul once more. So in essence, what Banquo is saying here is that these witches, the evil forces, the malevolent evil machinations on this fantastic spirit realm here, they're telling Macbeth and him something fair, and it's going to eventually manifest itself into something much more evil, into larger evils or larger fouls, if you will. So this is a great quote here in terms of fair versus foul. Now over here, after Banquo has said this, we jump down to the next line here with Macbeth, and he has an aside. And if you recall what an aside is when that character sort of steps away from the other characters and sort of talks, either to himself or talks to another character. And he has to project loud enough, for, of course, for the audience to hear, but no one else can hear him. It's different than a soliloquy here. So what's sort of going on in this particular moment here? Now, I call it sort of a soliloquy because it's so long. It's not really an aside that's taking place here. So what's he talking about? Well, he's pondering how this prophecy of the witches is both fair and foul, but also can't be both fair and foul. He even says it cannot be ill and it cannot be good. And then, he ruminates on the different ways in which it is good or which it is not so good. And specifically, he talks about being the Thane of Cawdor. There's your good. But then he talks about this, this horrifying image, this horrid image that's sort of in his mind. Now, is he talking about the witches, or is he talking about the thing that he's thinking about in his mind that he wants to do or he needs to do to King Duncan? Either way, foul and fair that's going on here. So let's move on here. So not to belabor the point for you, we want to take a look here. And we've jumped now finally into scene 4, right? And we're looking at lines 50 to 51. So interestingly, it's another aside by Macbeth. So Macbeth is become enraged at this particular moment. Why has he become enraged? Well, the reason why he's become enraged is we find out in lines 35 to 40. King Duncan has announced that Malcolm is the Prince of Cumberland, which means he's going to be the heir to the throne. He's going to be the next king. Well, Macbeth already knows that the witches have said, you're going to be king. And he trusts them because the other thing that they've said about him, which is he'll be the Thane of Cawdor, has come true already. So he steps aside and he sort of thinks to himself, and he says, stars, hide your fires, let not light see my black and deep desires. So he's saying, stars, don't cast your light on me because I'm scared that somebody's going to see the evil within me. There's your deception concept of fair versus foul. Don't cast your light on me because I'm trying to hide, deceive people with what's really on the inside. I want to present one face to hide what's going on the inside. And you're going to see that deception concept carried through for the rest of the act here. It's primarily at the drive of Lady Macbeth. So let's take a look at the last few lines here. So let's jump over to scene 5. We're looking at lines 61 to 62 here, right? So Macbeth is kind of, I don't want to say he's wishy-washy, but he's certainly hesitant to act against King Duncan. He's really, really hesitant about this. And also, he's sort of wearing his emotions on his sleeve. Well, Lady Macbeth says, you got to look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. So once again, we have the fair versus foul. We have the deception. We have the appearance of the good to hide what is evil underneath here. And let's take a look at the final quote that I've highlighted for you, ladies and gentlemen, which ends the act. And it's in scene 7. And it's a couplet too. And remember, we talked about how Shakespeare likes to end scenes and acts with couplets. We don't have a curtain. It sort of lets you, the audience member, know that that's the end of something big and transition to something else. So let's take a look here. So scene 7, to less than an extent, scene 6 too, it's like this big argument between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. And Lady Macbeth is trying to convince Macbeth to, of course, assassinate King Duncan, among other people. And Macbeth won't have it. So Lady Macbeth is questioning his masculinity. She attacks it. And she's questioning, basically if he's courageous on any level at all here. And she's very effective, very precise with her words. Eventually, Macbeth decides he's going to agree with her and support her. So now we come back to the deception concept of fair versus foul. Let's take a look here. Lines 81 and 82. He goes on to say, away and mock the time with fairest show. False face must hide what the false heart doth know. So that's pretty obvious there. The fairest show, meaning I'm going to put on a show of being good because I'm going to hide what my heart is in there. I have a false face to hide what's taking place. All right. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. If you have any questions about Macbeth, specifically the fair versus foul within Act 1, send me emails. My email address, of course, is james.foltz@redclay.k12.de.us. I'll also be available online for you during our regular learning support block hour. If you need to sort of chat with me outside of that time frame, you certainly are welcome to. Preferably a group of you to chat with me would be fantastic, and we'll have a little conversation about that. So again, the only thing that I expect you to have done for me next week are the notes on fair versus foul. The paper has not been assigned to you yet. I hope you're doing well. Again, if you have questions, email me. Take care.